Welcome to our regular iSpring webinar series where we discuss e-learning trends, share tips and tricks, and highlight client success stories. So my name is Helen, I'm Community Manager at iSpring and your moderator for today's session. And today's webinar is Building Your First Online Course. And first of all, let's get to know each other. Please write in the chat where you're joining us from. What do you do, maybe? Hello from Vietnam. Thank you. Philippines. Perfect. Auckland, Australia, India, Indonesia. Perfect. Okay, thank you. So meanwhile, you're typing where you're from in the chat. Let me tell you a few words about the company that organized this webinar. So for 24 years, iSpring has been at the forefront of e-learning software design, helping individuals, teams, academic institutions, and businesses succeed through enhanced online training and professional development. iSpring offers a comprehensive ecosystem. Our AI-powered authoring tool, iSpring Suite, allows you to create immersive, feature-rich courses from scratch. iSpring LMS is your go-to place for learning, distribution, management, and tracking. And iSpring Academy provides you with ready-made courses that you can deliver to your learners right away. Let me tell you a bit more about our authoring tool, iSpring Suite. This tool empowers you to create captivating courses with assessments, video lectures, interactive elements. You can easily transform presentations into courses and upload them to your LMS, build amazing quizzes with 14 question types, branching and flexible scoring, and create courses for learners with special needs. You can also streamline course creation with the iSpring AI Assistant. And since today we will be using this tool to create the course, I want to share with you a link to a free trial to check how this authoring tool works. You can download your free trial in the bottom left corner by clicking the button. Well, I know that a lot of people already know that we have a LinkedIn group. It's iSpring Learning Exchange, which packed with valuable resources on e-learning and instructional design, webinars and event updates and recordings, the latest industry news, career tips, and much more. You can connect with like-minded course developers, leaders from your field. You can learn from experts and peers, sharpen your skills in a supportive e-learning community. And I will share a link to join in the chat in just a second. Or you can just scan the QR code to join our group. Our guest today is Dr. Lyndon Walker. Hi, Lyndon. How are you doing today?
Excellent. Hi, everyone.
All right, perfect. I think that you can start your session.
Great. Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Let's change the slides over to my ones. Okay, hopefully we've got the slides coming up. So today we're going to be talking about building your first online course. Tried really hard not to make any assumptions about your background or experience in education. So for those of you that have done a bit of education, there'll be some things that might seem like basics. I got pretty enthused about making the slides for today's course or today's webinar. So I'm going to go somewhat quickly to try and mash it into an hour, but it is recorded, so you will be able to come back and re-watch. As Helen said, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I have the chat scrolling up and down in front of me. It's really great for me to be able to answer ones kind of in flow as I go. But if it's something that maybe takes a little bit more deliberation, I'll get our moderators to flag that. We'll come back to it at the end. So today I'm going to kick off by a little bit of getting to know each other. I'm going to be sharing with you a model of instructional design known as ADDIE. And then we're going to go through the different steps. So figuring out what we're going to teach, figuring out how we're going to teach it, looking a little bit at some of the tools and the platforms, giving you some suggestions for some of the content. We'll talk a little bit about assessment, and then a tiny bit about continuous improvement, and then some Q&A at the end if I haven't managed to kind of cover everything as we have gone along. So first off, thanks everyone who has already been commenting in the chat. What I would love to know is what type of course you are thinking about building or improving, and what do you hope to learn today? So if you can whack that into the chat, that's going to be really helpful for me to try and tailor. It'll let me know which bits to maybe try and focus on a little bit more than other bits. And so I'll give you a second to type that in. And yeah, greetings to everyone, New Zealand, Australia, number of different places through Asia. Germany, it must be pretty early or late. No, I've lost track of quite how far that time distance is. 6 a.m. Okay, bright and early. Okay, so we've got Helen is working in mental health. We've got product training, educator burnout prevention. I think that's going to be something that's very timely. Compliance, cool. So this is all good stuff. Embroidery private coaching, that is amazingly niche, and I would imagine you can get some very dedicated fans to that. Cool. So if you are still typing, please do finish off your thought. I will see it coming past. Where am I from? I am in Melbourne, Australia, which is really warm and sunny today, although I'm originally from New Zealand. And in fact, that's going to be our next slide. It's almost like you're reading my mind as we jump into the next slide. So that was a little bit about you, and just please do carry it on. Kia ora to the Kiwis. So a little bit about me. I was in higher education for more than 20 years. I taught and researched statistics, finance, education, sociology, kind of jumped around a few different subjects. In terms of online learning, at one point I was teaching what was at the time the largest online subject in Australia. So I had more than 2,000 students per cohort. So I've taught online at mass scale. But I've also dabbled with things like Skillshare, where it's much more little block, short course, tight delivery type stuff. I've been involved with the design of Swinburne Online, La Trobe Online, University of Auckland Online, in various different contracting and employed roles through those universities and the organizations that help them with their learning design. I've had a number of different teaching awards. Pictured there is my OLT, which is a National Australian Teaching Award. Currently, I work for the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners. I do research on how to teach our doctors to be GPs, and particularly looking at a lot of AI. On the side, I am a YouTuber where I talk about AI research and data. I'm a consultant, I'm a board member. There's probably about 10 other different things that I could put in there, but the slide was already getting pretty full. Okay, so we've had more going past, and yeah, really wide range, everything from martial arts through to higher ed. I'm going to try and capture as much breadth as possible. Definitely a lot of what I'm talking about was principles based, is going to apply to all of you. I will kind of give a bit of separation of things that are accredited type education, so things like higher education, versus someone who is just making their own short course. And I had a bit of a think about this, and there's a number of different kind of instructional design models. This one I picked out to share with you because I think it is fairly straightforward. I mapped out the stuff I wanted to talk to you about, and then I kind of actually almost thought backwards across a couple of different models. So this one's called ADDIE. It's an acronym for Analyze, Design, Develop, Implement, Evaluate. And when you look through that description there, to some degree, it is pretty, well, not self-explanatory, but it kind of almost seems like common sense. But it is a good way, particularly if you haven't taught before, of kind of thinking about things and really doing them in the right order. So not jumping in and trying to build a quiz before we've really decided what the content is, or before we've decided what the point of the course actually is. So analyze, is our first point. I'm going to have a couple of slides where I talk about other things beyond what I've got here, but basically, what am I trying to teach? Who am I trying to teach? What are my constraints and any other parameters I need to think about before I even start designing? Then mapping out, what is this course going to look like? What is the goals? From the goals, what is the content? What are the activities? What are the assessment? Then we develop, so we actually build that stuff. Then we launch our course. We do our teaching. And then that last step, evaluate, is really important because we've done all this effort of teaching, but we really want to check and see if we've done a good job. And that's going to apply in any context. So if I'm a martial arts teacher, I'm making my own short course that I'm going to be teaching martial arts through. I still want to make sure that once I've run it once, next time round, I'm going to address any gaps. It's going to be even better next time. If we're working in any kind of accredited situation, the evaluation component is going to be pretty much compulsory. It's expected. But even if you're just doing your own courses, it's really good practice. So we do have a template for this. So this is not absolutely complete, but it's just kind of a framework for you to start thinking about these things. So we're going to share this. I think it's in PDF, but certainly if you'd like, we can also supply with the Word version. It's going to step through the things to be thinking about in those 5 steps. And in particular, you can see there the first 2, the analyze and the design. So we've got that shared there. You should see that up on the screen, or flicking over to the handouts tab, you can hit download and get a copy of that. I will just give you a second to do that clicking. Looks like a bit of networking happening in the chat there. Also excellent. If this has been the conduit for you finding someone else in your area, fantastic. Okay, so that was our template. So still thinking about the analyze, I'm sitting and I'm going, okay, I'm going to make this online course. I need to think about the purpose, and then I need to think about any constraints and parameters. So what is this course? Is this compliance or HR? Is this education, or is it some sort of learning development? Am I trying to share my expertise for profit? Maybe it's a marketing, actually kind of a marketing or a funnel for other things. You might have your short course, and your short course is there not so much to make money, but to actually find your customers and validate to them that you know your stuff. And maybe there's consulting or product or other stuff after that. Maybe you are actually in an educational institution. So we had one go past, higher education, tourism and hospitality. There's someone that's sitting within a larger program of learning. They may already be delivering on campus, and maybe the on-campus subjects are getting converted into online. You might be doing an online subject, but it could be part of an online degree. So you might be one part of something bigger, and you might be converting a delivery mode as well. So this might be something you've already taught, but you're changing the mode of delivery, and that is going to change some of how you go about teaching it. Every different medium, whether it's kind of a hybrid versus an online versus an in-person, and even with your in-person, whether it's kind of in a block or whether it's over a semester, all of those things can change the specifics of how you go about delivering. And so thinking about that, I've got the second set of things that we should be thinking about in terms of constraints and parameters. So some of these could be externally imposed on you. Some of these could be self-imposed. Something I really want to emphasize, particularly if you're not doing this as some sort of accredited program where your course has to look like a specific thing, is for your first course, keep it simple. And I'll probably try and repeat that a couple of times through this webinar. Keep it simple. Get something that looks as good as it can, but don't set out to build a giant 12-week, many hours per week, giant course. If this is your absolute first time, think about something small. What's a little tiny course? Maybe something I can whack on Skillshare. Maybe something I can just share with some friends or some colleagues, really start to just kind of master some of this stuff. So course length could be anything like 30 minutes through to a couple of hours if it's compliance, HR, if it's micro-credential, if you're just delivering something on a very specific topic, through to you could have multi-session. It could be days, weeks, semesters, terms, depending on what it is. You might get to choose that, you might not. If you do get to choose it, something that I would really highlight is that more doesn't mean better. So there is a temptation for people to go, for my course to be the best, for me to show the most value, it has to be 40 hours long. But if your customers or your learners that you're trying to pitch to are busy executives, they probably don't have 40 hours. Something that's 1 hour or 2 hours max is probably actually going to be much more suitable to them and much more appealing to them. So don't think more is better. And particularly if you're kind of just building this for yourself. Something to think about is whether you're delivering synchronous or asynchronous. So synchronous means that you'll have some Zoom or some live online stuff where you are online and the other learners are online at the same time. Or it could be asynchronous. That could just mean pre-recorded. So here's the videos, all the stuff that you click through. But it could mean that you have things like discussion boards where people will write, you'll reply, but you won't be replying at the same time. So they do some and you do some and you go back and forth. You need to think about whether there is going to be some timing or availability. Is this a fixed term thing? Or maybe if it's an HR compliance, it's just always sitting there for when people need to do it. If you are doing anything that is accredited, if you're in a university or a school, or if you're delivering professional education, there could be legal requirements, curriculum requirements, professional and institutional requirements. Really important you stay across those. If you're teaching anything compliance related, making sure you are completely across the professional body, all of their rules, that kind of thing. If you are teaching to a particular platform, are there any requirements or expectations there? So I've mentioned Skillshare, but Udemy, all of those ones, they have particular requirements for the delivery of their courses. You need to be thinking about who your learners are. So who are they? What skills do they have? Can I assume they know certain things or not? Do they have skills, capacity? Are there any issues around them being able to access online internet connections? Are they going to be connecting on their phones or on computers? All things that might influence exactly how we deliver. And then lastly, your teaching experience. So if you have been teaching in some other form, you may have more intuition than someone who is maybe very good in their discipline or their domain, but has never really taught it before. There might be a little bit more pre-reading you need to do around education, around teaching, around how people learn and stuff like that. So I was hoping, and originally I was really overly ambitious, I was going to build my own short course in parallel with this webinar. And I ran myself out of time, and I probably have too much content anyway. But I am going to have a few slides as we go where I'll kind of give you some principles or some information, and then we'll jump to my course. And so unfortunately, I didn't finish my course. So the last thing we're going to see is going to be just a couple of starting slides that I made in iSpring and then ran out of time to finish. But it's going to give us a little bit of a concrete example as we go. So here's my example course. And so it's going to be called Safe and Sensible Use of AI in the Workplace. It's going to be an organizational training course. It's kind of, from the title, fairly self-explanatory. I want to keep it under 30 minutes. My plan with this course is it's something where I'm sharing my expertise for profit, ideally in like a business-to-business sense. So rather than getting individuals actually having it as a professional development product, possibly it could be something where it's pre-recorded, but I would then upsell a live version or some consulting. Because I'm thinking about this as something that's going to go into people's HR and learning and development systems, the standard there is what's called a SCORM package, so SCORM, which is a shareable content object reference model. Doesn't probably mean much to you if you haven't seen that acronym before. Basically, it's a way of packing up your digital data. And so it is the standard for a lot of HR and learning and development systems. And if you were going to sell to big organizations, that is basically the mode of delivery you would probably need. And quite conveniently, iSpring is one of the biggest platforms for creating SCORM packages. And my learners, they're going to be professionals. They are going to be working in companies using computers, and AI has come along, and they need to be educated potentially on how to use AI, but in a safe and sensible way. So that's my example course. We're going to come back to it a couple more times as we look at some learning outcomes, look at some development stuff like that. How are we going? I know I'm going pretty quick. Hopefully everyone is keeping up. If it is a little bit too quick, there will be the recording. You will be able to listen to it over again as well. There is a thumbs up there. Thank you, Celeste. Okay, so I've figured out those constraints. I've figured out kind of the basics. Now what I need to do is I need to establish some learning outcomes. So this is one of the foundation parts of education delivery. If you are doing it, if you're doing teaching through a school or a university or a TAFE or a college or any kind of accredited teaching, then this is like the starting point and is going to be very, very important. Even if you're not, this is valuable for you because it helps guide your thinking on what the learner should be able to do at the end of your course. And it's going to be helpful for your learner because when you provide information about your course, and say for mine, if I was selling it to organizations, here is my course, here are the learning outcomes. By the end of this course, the learners will be able to blah, blah, and blah. So it should be a clear statement about what either the learner is going to know or be able to do after the instruction. If you are working in an accredited environment, then the verb that you use, and these normally start off with a verb, is going to be very important because the verb signals what level of education. So if we're talking about a school student, maybe a school student needs to recall, or they need to match, or they need to describe. But if I have a university student, maybe they need to create or they need to critically evaluate. If it's postgraduate education, then they maybe need to synthesize. So there's different verbs that match up to different levels. And this becomes really important if you are ever teaching and you have a course that needs accreditation. And one of my past jobs was a national moderator for New Zealand Qualifications Authority. And that was one of the things we looked at, was making sure that all of the verbs on all of the subjects actually matched up to the levels. So degrees, diplomas, masters, that they actually matched up. When you use your verbs should be something that you can assess. So if I tell someone, if they describe as my verb, I can give them a quiz, or I can give them an assignment, or I can give them an exam, or I can give them something where they show me that they can do describing. I can look and I can assess that. There are verbs that sometimes people use that aren't easy to assess. And the one back from those days where I was a moderator and I was looking at this for a qualifications authority that drove me crazy was appreciate. People thought they were being very clever by saying, appreciate the fine art of 17th century Europe. But how do you assess someone appreciating? It's not something that's easily accessible. So we want to have a learning outcome where it's accessible. If you are teaching a longer course, or you're teaching something that's part of a degree, then you might have layers of learning outcomes. So your degree will have some graduate outcomes. Then your subject will have learning outcomes for the subject. But then if it's a whole semester subject, then every week or every lesson you'll have outcomes for those lessons. You might have those levels of them as well. So learning outcomes, vital if you're in an accredited situation, but even if you're not, really helpful for guiding you and also for informing the learners of what they should be getting at the end. An excellent comment there. If you want to dive deeper into education, those levels of those verbs come from something called Bloom's taxonomy, and that talks about the different levels. And for those of you who are already in education and familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, I think it's probably still floating around on YouTube. There's a hilarious Seinfeld examples of Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, so we're diving deep into memes. So learning outcomes, my course. So back to my AI course, and I've got 3 for a 30-minute course. That's probably actually overkill. You probably only needed 2. I added a 3rd kind of a little bit begrudgingly, and I don't think that these are perfect. And in fact, we'll look at them quickly and then we'll critique them. You'll notice that I've even bolded the verb here. So we've got identify, evaluate, and distinguish. Those are all things that I can test you to see that you can do. I've tried to make it very clear. So identify key risks of workplace AI, and then I've included some examples. Sometimes you want to include examples, sometimes you don't, depending on how many examples, depending on, you might instead say all of them major, or depends on your domain. Evaluate whether AI is a tool suitable for a given task, and then use simple fact-checking steps to confirm accuracy of its output. I wrote this, but I would critique it that it is actually double-barreled. And ideally, you don't want to do what I did here. So I've kind of given you an example of one that's like, it's okay, it's not perfect. Because I've said you're doing one thing, but then I've whacked an and in there, and then there's another thing. And the second thing does kind of carry on from the first thing. You look at your AI tool, you go, is this the right AI tool for what I want to do? And then you check it afterwards. So it does kind of line up, but if we were being really fussy, we might say, making it double-barreled, not perfect, but okay. And then my 3rd one, distinguish between public, internal, and sensitive data to make safe choices about what to share and with which AI tools. So there I've got 3 things. Those are the things that I want my learners to be able to do at the end of my course. So I've got some learning outcomes, and then here's our next, I guess, piece of education jargon. We have a thing called constructive alignment. And again, if you're an accredited course, that is vital. But even if you're just doing this just for yourself, really, really helpful. So basically what it means is we get those learning outcomes. We make sure those map to the content. So the content is delivering what the learning outcomes are trying to achieve. The activities map to the content and the learning outcomes. The assessment maps to the activities, the content, and learning outcomes. So all of that all lines up together. I'm not assessing you on something that you haven't had some activities to practice. I'm not assessing you on content that was not part of what I taught you. And all of that stuff that I'm assessing and delivering to you all comes back to the learning outcomes. We have a question there about learning objectives or learning outcomes. There can be some different phrasing where I have seen course objectives and course and learning objectives used in place of learning outcomes. So learning outcomes is what we would see in the countries that I've worked in the school and tertiary environments. So it could be that you in, say, a corporate environment or in a different country may have slightly different terminology that does mean that same thing. So learning objectives and course objectives potentially could be filling that same role as learning outcomes. Excellent question. So what we want to do is we want to map this stuff out. What I like to do is have a table. So here's my learning outcome, here's my content, here's my activities, here's my assessment. Map it out so that I can make sure that all of the learning outcomes are covered by the stuff, and all of the stuff maps back to the learning outcomes. And then if I was teaching for a whole semester, I would just make that even bigger. So week 1, week 2, week 3, here's the subject learning outcomes, and then here's the class or session learning outcomes. And so when you're doing that, when you're doing like a whole subject, or even potentially you're doing a whole degree, that can be a fair bit of mapping. So here is an example. Some people like doing it the analog way with Post-its. And so you can see a whole lot of Post-its there mapping out semester, weeks, learning outcomes, activities, all there for people to be, for the team, and it was a big subject, multiple people be able to walk along. Some people do this digitally. So there's Miro, which is a popular digital tool. You can do that same kind of equivalent mapping. Okay, so next couple of slides, just a few more things to know or things to be thinking about as you are developing your content and then building your course. And not really any particular order to these. This is just like, I didn't want to make it a brain dump, but there's like multiple things. Navigation and signposting, both really important. Making it really easy, making no friction for someone to be able to work their way and step through your course. I've seen some learning management systems and platforms can be clunky and hard to navigate. So sometimes you might have a video tour, or you might have some sort of map to be able to actually show the learner, here's where you click, you go here, then here, then here. Making the experience consistent. So if it's every week, introduction, content, activity, summary, or whatever, that's just a suggestion of how you lay it out. But once they've mastered it in week 1 or week 2, you don't want them to be looking at something completely different in week 3 and having to figure it out again. And then signposting. So being really explicit with, we've learned this, now we're going to move, you've mastered this, now we're going to move on to this, showing how things link up to each other. If I'm creating, and so in the chat, if I'm creating an online course designed to serve the purpose of professional learning, does it need to be assessed? Would it give more weighting or credibility to the course? Yes and yes, and we've got assessment coming up soon. So a few more slides, we'll get into some talk about assessment. And if I don't, through talking about assessment, fully answer that little, then prod me to come back to that. But yes, coming up. Okay, some more considerations. So online teaching, if you're looking at stuff about instructional design, you'll see them sometimes talking about what's called chunking. Chunking is where you take your content, you break it down to small digestible bites. If they're videos, 5 to 10 minutes, rather than having really long lectures. 1 second, we have a meowing cat. Okay, I didn't show you the cat. I'll show you a picture of the cat shortly with a story about the cat. He is pretty cute. So chunking, 5 to 10 minute videos. We don't want long lectures. I had a friend that was teaching online, and he's like, you know, they watch like my little summary videos, but they don't watch the lecture videos. And it's like, your lecture videos are 3 hours long, even for the subjects that I teach and I love. I don't think I would sit down and watch a 3-hour thing about it, and certainly not like multiple, and certainly not every week. So we really want to make things into really good bite-sized digestible. And there's a lot of cognitive science around that making sense as well. Multimedia principle, again, if you want to go down a rabbit hole, Mayer's cognitive theory of multimedia learning. Basically, we don't just want text, words. If we can break that up with some images and kind of other bits and pieces, then that helps people digest it better. Really important, it's relevant though. Don't just whack in random pictures. Make sure it is stuff that's relevant to the content. Concept of scaffolding. Scaffolding is where we build up knowledge or skills or expertise. So if I'm needing to teach something complex, I start with something very simple, a lot of hand holding, a lot of guidance. Next step, it's a little bit harder and a little bit less of that really kind of strong support. And then each step, making it get a little bit harder, still supporting, still educating, not just leaving the learner to do it and figure it out by themselves. But as scaffolding would suggest, just building on itself over. Teacher presence is really important. So having informal videos, just intros, how's it going, announcements, personalized feedback, making your learners feel like you are there and there is a teacher. And I think that's where a lot of HR and that compliance stuff can fall down, because it gets very depersonalized. And I think when you make something personalized, it gives much more opportunity for people to be able to connect to it. And then social learning. So peer interaction is great, probably makes sense more for longer courses. If there's a semester, you need to consider accessibility. You need to be flexible because people do online learning at different speeds for a variety of different reasons. Don't force it, but if you can have opportunities for those interactions, that can be really good. Okay, so my course, back to my course again, mapping out. So first column, I've got my learning outcomes. I kind of abbreviated them to fit them on the slide. And then this is the real skeleton. So just I'm going to have a short what is AI, then I'm going to get into covering the risks. I'm going to have a matching exercise. This is only a 30-minute course, so all of this is all going to have an assessment at the end, which is going to be a test your understanding, end of module quiz thing. This is the tiniest of courses. If we were doing a Skillshare or a Udemy, it might be the same. We just have that little assessment-y thing at the end. But I still have activities throughout. I still have it nice and clearly ordered. I might have some video, I might have some text content, whatever makes sense for delivering. This is just the bare bones. I would then either on a piece of paper or in a Word document actually then start to expand everything that I have here into like a bigger version. Here's another example. This was from a whole semester course I was teaching. It was survey research methods. I was teaching it on campus and online. And here I had my subject learning outcome, create surveys for research purposes. But then within week 4, we were looking at Likert scales. And for that, I then had those 3 learning outcomes. This particular course, I had like some little video vignettes. Then this did have a class component. In class, we did some activities. Post-class, there was some either formative quizzes, and all of that was building and scaffolding up to an assignment several weeks later. So there's a little bit more on that. If you do go back through the old iSpring webinars, I did do a webinar on flipped classroom teaching. I talked a whole lot more about that. You definitely want interaction. So should we have activities? There should be active engagement of the learner. They should not just be passively trying to take in new material, because the active learning is going to make it much more effective. Very good question. Okay, AI. AI can be really handy. AI can make cool pictures. AI can help you brainstorming. AI can help you write stuff. But if all you're doing is just making ChatGPT slop and whacking it to a course, you are adding no value. And you're not really doing any service to your learners. If you're trying to do this as a paid course, you'll very quickly get the reputation of someone that just does AI slop, and people will not be interested. So use AI sparingly, but your course should have an element of you, a strong element of you as the educator. You are the one that's delivering it. There's probably one exception to that where, say I was delivering something like a first aid course. The first aid courses, at the end, you need to be able to do the CPR. That's the whole thing. The educator, less important. But having said that, if you go along to a couple of CPR courses, you're going to remember which one had the good educator, and you're going to remember which one had the crappy educator. So still really important. If you do want some more discussion about AI, I have done 2 different iSpring webinars about AI. One from the educator side on doing research on building stuff, and one on the learner's side talking about stuff you could get learners to do, and also the a fair bit about AI and assessment as well. So both of those are available on the iSpring site. Okay, so now we need to think a little bit about content. Depending on what we are delivering, there's going to depend on what is going to make most sense. We might have some amount of written content, but be careful not to overwhelm with too much reading. You can get too enthused, a little bit like I have done today, and kind of overdo it. You might have worksheets, checklists, diagrams. If it is a longer course and you're going to have discussion boards and you're actually going to have this interaction where you're discussing about stuff with your learners, then that's going to be something where you're going to have some discussion prompts to think about that. Your multimedia, you might have audio, you might have videos. Getting more advanced, HTML5 is a way of making a website or a learning management system interactive and have kind of interactive stuff where people can click and point and do stuff on the screen. So you might have digital interactive activities. We might have things like quizzes and assessments as well. Last plug, I promise. I mean, this is, I think, the 6th iSpring webinar over the past year and a bit that I've given. So last iSpring old webinars plug. There is one webinar there fairly recently where I did a webinar about how to create videos. So you may also like to go back and look at that one. And that's the last I will mention old webinars, I think. When you're building your content, you need to make sure that your activities are engaging and interactive. So back to that question about activities, think about activities as making the learning interactive in whatever fashion makes sense. If I'm teaching martial arts, someone probably has to do some moving at some point. It's probably not going to be very effective if they just sit there and they read. Like if I sit down and I read a book about weightlifting, I'm not going to get any stronger. I need to actually go and lift some weights. So we need some kind of interaction and something that is engaging in order to get your learners really absorbing the material, practicing and doing the things that you're trying to teach them. Be realistic about the length, be realistic about the level. There's a balance of content creation and curation. So creation is you making stuff. Curation is where you are finding other stuff. There is some great material out there, but don't turn your course into just only everyone else's material and not your own. You want to be able to channel you and your material. Make it fun. So I've got when I was teaching statistics, that bottom picture there is a dance company from London doing a dance, interpretive dance about correlation. So instead of saying correlation is the summation of x minus x bar, y minus y bar, giving giant formula, here's some people dressed in red and black, and they are dancing to teach you about correlation. And you will remember that. It is really interesting and is really effective and is really different and is really novel. And for me, as you've probably been able to tell already, matches to my personality, makes sense for the course that I'm delivering, was very effective for the students. The students really liked it. Another way that with my online learning, with my videos, the cat who you didn't get to see, but there's a picture of them, he video bombed some videos. And the first one he did, he video bombed it. Up until that point, it was perfect. It was just, I had nailed every piece of content. It's like, oh, this is great. And then I was like, and then meow, 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 meow. And I left it in. And that next week, all the students were asking about the cat. So I knew they'd watched the video because they'd heard the cat in the video. And then they wanted to know about the cat. And then every week they wanted to know about the cat. And I did things like in the learning management system, when you finished an optional activity, you got a picture or a video of the cat. So there was your reward for doing the extra piece of work as you got. And then they would talk to each other. It's like, oh, did you do the exercise? If you do the exercise, you get the picture of the cat. Oh, look at what the cat's doing now. And so the cat became like the guest star of the subject. And again, made sense for me, made sense for my personality, for what I was delivering, and for how I engaged with the students. So think about that and how that can, like your version of that. If you don't have a cat, then don't try and force cat stuff into it. But like, what is your version of that? I mean, you can see I've got guitars in the background. Maybe I put the guitars in. Maybe I do something that just is me plus material, making that a nice experience for learners and something that's going to be more memorable. If you are teaching in higher education, certainly in New Zealand and Australia, but probably most of the world at this stage, accessibility and inclusion are really important. That is making your materials accessible for someone that might have challenges with sight, with hearing, with there's a range of other different things. Making sure we have clear, simple language, making sure that we use sensible colors. If you have someone that has color blindness, not mixing your greens and your reds and things that they can't line up. There's a number of different apps that will help test your content. I've got a little picture there. And you can see that if I tried to have black text on a dark blue, you can see some little X's down the bottom. It failed those requirements. With your videos, have transcripts and captions. They fill two different purposes. The captions help for someone as they are watching. The transcript helps for a range of people, including neurodiverse people, in terms of being able to digest the material in different ways. Make sure you're really consistent with your structure. Test your course with assistive technology if you can. And think about flexibility. So when you're doing online teaching, particularly if it's a whole semester, you are going to get people who get unwell, that have sick kids, that have just stuff happen in their life. People are normally learning online because they are trying to fit it in a way that they couldn't go to on campus. So design with flexibility. And so this is particularly if we're talking about school, university, that distance learning, that longer kind of semester type stuff. I would always build my assessments where I knew I had a week of extra slack in terms of my timing, that if you told me assignment 1, whatever disaster, as long as it was something remotely reasonable, like it didn't need, I think I had some terrible number of dead grandparents in one semester, but whatever it is in their life that means they can't submit today, I've already planned for that. That first few days or that first week, I pretty much gave anyone that asked for it with any remotely reasonable reason why. I built that flexibility into my course because it helped with the success of my students. So if you're teaching longer form courses, really think about that flexibility. Okay, online classes. You may or may not have synchronous contact. If you do, don't just lecture at your students. You can make that material a video. You should make any of that synchronous contact be about activities, interaction, questions, and feedback. So today we're kind of, I mean, there's a lot of me talking at you, but the chat and you asking questions in the chat and that going past and me being able to give you direct feedback on those questions is really what makes this different from you just going and finding the video later. You can ask the questions. I'm doing my best to answer them as they go past. If you're using Zoom or the other products, the breakout rooms are great for activities. Have a look at different cloud tools as well. So there's dedicated cloud tools, but even stuff like Google Sheets can be really great for your online live teaching. So for example, here's a screenshot from Miro. You had different groups, they were going away, they were doing stuff, they'd write it on. Basically, this is the equivalent of in the classroom, one of those activities where they write on the Post-its and they whack up the Post-its, and then you go and look at the other groups and you discuss what each group did. You can do that with Miro online, exactly the same. You can see it even looks the same. But even just stuff like Google Sheets. So this was one of mine. I was teaching finance. This was actually in COVID. It wasn't supposed to be online, but we had COVID. Everything went online. I was teaching some finance. We did some Google Sheets. We did some analysis. We did it all together in the sheet. Everyone logged into the sheet. Everyone could see what was going on, who was in what cell, what was happening. Engaging, interactive. They're learning a million times more than me just sitting and telling them finance formulas. So just a few ideas there. Okay, really conscious time. We are really pushing it. Hopefully you're keeping up. So platforms and authoring, I've mentioned SCORM already. I've mentioned that iSpring can do SCORM packages. You might not necessarily be doing something that complex. You might just have some videos and some PDFs and ideally a bit of interaction and activities. PowerPoint, iSpring, I think I'm very happy for everyone to have this PowerPoint and they have a copy of it, so they should be distributing it. Now I want to share my course. Depending on where you are and what is supplied to you or what you're paying for yourself, it depends how you might do it. So LMS is a learning management system. If you are in a school or university or a bigger organization, they'll have Canvas or Moodle. They might have iSpring. They might have Blackboard. You'll plug it in there. If you're in a commercial environment, SharePoint and Teams and Google Classroom, and again, like commercial and big or even medium to big organizations will have enterprise platforms to be able to fit it in. Then you've got consumer grade, so Thinkific, Kajabi, Teachable. There's a whole lot where that's really for you just as like a solo creator to be able to share stuff. Does cost a bit. There is marketplaces like Udemy and Skillshare. The learner pays them and you get like a little cut for people watching your content. It's not a great model, but it is not too bad if you just want to have practice. They are getting very fussy on the quality of content though, so you can't automatically just create a Skillshare and then just off you go. There's kind of some barriers there now. You might just make a WordPress site and have some plugins. That's pretty, I mean, it's technically not simple, but it's kind of a cheaper way. Okay, so back to my AI in the workplace, and this is where I got up to. I did not finish, but we can see here I was building iSpring. You can see there it's maybe a little bit little depending on your screen. iSpring, once you install it, is just a tab. It's just in your ribbon. It's one of the tabs. Lets you do a whole lot of extra stuff. So if I carried on with this, I'd add my videos, add my content, and then I can save it. I can export it as something that'll go into an LMS, or I can export it into a SCORM package if I was trying to sell it to organizations. They have lots of templates. I chose this very purple modern looking one, but there's all sorts of different vibes in there. Okay, assessment. We did get to it, Lil. So assessment will be vital if your course is a university or school or anything like that. But even if not, it's important for being able to test that people learned what you have taught them, and really valuable for giving feedback as well. So that rigor might vary, but I think that it's really important to have something in there for assessment, and to respect your learners and not just make it token. I really hate when I do a compliance module and there's questions like, it's okay to defraud the company, true or false? And I know that that's what they are trying to figure out, but they can at least have a little bit of respect for the brains of the learners and ask some slightly more sensible questions. So I think assessment is still really important for any kind of course. The question that went past about SCORM, Louise, it's probably a long, complicated answer. It kind of packages everything into a zip file in a format that different learning and development and HR systems understand and can track that their staff have done the training. So it's basically a format. You can jam all sorts of stuff into it. If you Google up, the summary at the top of Google is probably pretty good for just a little bit of extra info. Okay, assessment principles. Again, really, really important. School, uni, polytech, stuff like that. But even for like you delivering as a solo person, valid measures what it claims to measure, and I guess an extension of that, it's measuring about the person as well. You can go off and see those AI webinars, and that will give you a bit more about making sure that the thing measures what it's who is supposed to be doing the assessment. Reliable, so it consistently gives same results. A student that is good is a student that is good. If I have unreliable assessment, sometimes they're scoring high and sometimes they're scoring low, and it's not because of them, it's because of my assessment. That's really problematic. It should be fair and equitable, so we should be thinking about doing things where there's no kind of bias, whether that's assumptions around pre-knowledge or background or language skills or idioms or anything that might mean that all of your learners don't have a fair and equal way of demonstrating their learning. You want to be really transparent up front. Here is the assessment. Here is how I'm going to grade you. I think it's really important that you are transparent to your learners, and they will appreciate that as well. I think everyone here at some stage has been a learner, so you can think about you as a learner. What was good? What was not so good? Don't recreate the bad stuff. And it needs to be feasible. So don't create giant assessments for a little tiny course. It should match the size of the course, the scale of the course, the skill of the learners, as well as the content. In terms of things you could be doing for assessment, there's all the traditional stuff, so quizzes, assignments, discussion boards, projects. For bigger courses, accredited courses, a lot of the universities are moving back to having exams, sometimes making people come to exam centres. You might then move into things like presentations, pitches. A Viva Voce is just an oral exam. With that style of assessment, with presentation stuff, be careful that you're not biasing against non-native speakers of whatever language you're teaching in. You're not biasing against, say, people who are neurodivergent or autistic and maybe struggle a little bit with language and projection, and they can be very, very smart, but you just haven't given them the right medium to be able to communicate in. Then you can start to get fancy digital storytelling, multimedia project. There's a million different things. Maybe you're making martial arts videos for your martial arts course. One I really quite like is making students build learning resources. So they build a thing that teaches the thing, and that really is going to really give me some really good insight on how well they understand a topic or a concept by how well they can make a learning resource to then teach it to someone else. And some of my very best ones and top students over the years, I've actually then said to, and in fact, I've said in advance, and then I've kind of after the fact said to them, this is amazing. This is, I mean, once or twice it was even better than what I was already using to teach some topics. And that became just part of the body of knowledge. And some of them then took it and used it as kind of portfolios for employment and things like themselves. Definitely need to think hard about AI. And again, if you're in an environment where there's professional bodies, stuff like that people can't just chat GPT it. Okay, with 2 minutes left, we make it to the last content slide. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this stuff. There's a lot I really wanted to get across. Hopefully it has been making sense. So we've run our course. Really important that we do that fifth step of the ADDIE, the evaluate. So look at our learner outcomes. Were the learners able to demonstrate what I wanted them to? So from my assessments, did they do a good job? And if they didn't, was that because of them or was that because of me? What can I do to make my course better in the future? Getting feedback from them. Sometimes for some subjects, I've taught compulsory first year statistics. They don't want to do it, but they have to do it. And so sometimes there will be feedback about, oh, I hate this. And the response is a little bit, well, you got to eat your vegetables. Like, too bad. But within that, there is often good learner feedback. And so you really want to get that feedback to improve the course for next time, make adjustments, make sure you keep stuff up to date. Don't be afraid to test new approaches, but do iterate gradually. So as I said, right, very early on, start simple, aim to improve over time, but don't bite off too much. A little bit like I did with my AI course that I didn't get to finish and show you, unfortunately. A lot of this will take a lot longer than you think. And so I think that is kind of the key message, is keep it simple. So we have made it to the end, miraculously, with 1 minute to go. I believe Helen has one thing she wants to share with you, and then after that, we'll do Q&A, and I'm very happy to hang around a little bit extra for extra questions. I know there was a couple that got flagged as we went that I didn't get to.
Thank you, Lyndon. Thank you for this presentation. So much practical information. I hope our attendees also found it really valuable and applicable to their field of work. All right, I just wanted to share a little bit about our certification program, which allows you to learn how to use iSpring's authoring tool or iSpring's LMS as well if you need and want it. So you will be able to learn how to use iSpring Suite like a pro, can get certified as an iSpring Suite professional and advance your career in e-learning. And also, once you're certified, you can be listed in our catalog of certified e-learning specialists, and we'll give you a place to list your skills and showcase your work so clients can easily get in touch with you. I will share a link in the bottom left corner so you can get the details of our certification program and learn if this is what you need. All right, I think now we can move on to the Q&A session and let's see what questions we had in the chat.
So just bringing my Q&A slide back up. If people do want to connect with me, you can do that via my website, which admittedly is a little bit out of date. So you'll see me with horrible long hair. YouTube and LinkedIn are the 3 places you can find me. So I've scrolled back. We've got a couple here that are tagged. Don't know if that's Dewey or Dewey, or I apologize for not knowing the pronunciation of your name. What is the difference that we should do in online learning for free versus paid? I mean, that's probably a little bit more of a commercial question. And so it's probably if someone is using this as maybe like marketing funnel type approach. And so you may have your very, very short course that's free, and then you might have your paid one that's bigger. Very much depends on like your business model and what you're teaching. I would emphasize that either way, like you want your quality to be good. So you want one to really reflect how good the other is. For me, I think I've spent enough time in academia that like I just have a bit of a knowledge is free kind of approach. So like the handout, my slides, all of that is there for you. I have a tendency to probably overgive on the free stuff, but then kind of later on, I think that then gets you get that appreciation back, whether it's in Karma or whether it's in kind of contacts and consulting and whatever. David has a question. Appreciate the warning on privacy when uploading to AI. How confidential is it? So my advice and the advice through my workplace as well, I'm very heavily involved with our AI work there, is you should never upload anything that is personal, private, confidential, or IP really into any AI system unless it is local or you absolutely know the terms of service and the privacy policy. And that would include something like ChatGPT. Don't assume that it's not very likely someone will find it, but in terms of good data governance and the way that you treat your data and your IP, you shouldn't. You should absolutely never upload any student work or any work of anyone else without them knowing as well. So I think that's really, really important. Yeah, like there's definitely stuff that could go wrong there. So be very careful. Any new AI tool, always look at the terms of service, always look at the privacy policy. If you get overwhelmed by those, copy the link to ChatGPT and say, hey, ChatGPT, read this terms of service for me and flag anything that I should be concerned about. I'm not sure how well it'll work on its own, but I mean, at the very least, you get a bit of a summary there of what might be risky. Okay, scrolling down, we have another one here. How do you decide on the duration of the course and the lesson? So that's a really good question. There's not really a magic number. I think it depends very much on your context. So those early slides I had about the purpose and then the constraints, thinking about who is my learner, and I guess who is the customer, if that is a commercial education situation. Because say if it is a busy executive, they're probably going to want it at once, then want it not too long. If we were doing something in as HR or as compliance, anything beyond 30 minutes is really starting to kind of, unless it's something complex and absolutely needs more, it's probably going to be a hard sell. So it's a case of what is realistic, what is the learner's going to like, but also what is the size where I can realistically fit that much information in. So you can see today with my slides, that was a squeeze into an hour. That was probably better to have a fraction longer, or me to have been a little bit more ruthless. But I really wanted to tell you guys all of that stuff. Some of it does come from experience as well. So yeah, that delivery today, next time around, maybe we'll kind of shave the intro and we'll kind of those extra 2 or 3 minutes, and I'll be a little bit smoother. Maybe I'll take a slide out. So some of that then also on that ADDIE model is that evaluation going, didn't give myself enough time, or this was a bit long. Anything that you're delivering digitally, you can always look at, there'll always be stats there as well. So like on a YouTube channel, the YouTube tells me exactly where people drop off. And so I can go back and I can look at a video and I can go, okay, all of a sudden a whole lot of people dropped off at like this 8-minute mark. What happened there? And then I can go back and go, okay, I kind of talked about a thing that was a bit off topic. Or so whether it's looking at a video, whether it's looking at your course, there's usually some analytics there where you can see where people have dropped off, where people were confused, things like that. And then you can kind of adjust. So don't know if that kind of gave you a super clear answer, but hopefully that's some things to think about that course and lesson. Sometimes if it's like you start mapping it and you're like, oh, this is a lot, and you're just doing this for profit, or you're doing this as a solo creator, you might go, oh, actually, maybe this is 2 courses. Maybe this is like intro to martial arts, and then it's a kind of intermediate martial arts. So actually sometimes you might partway through that mapping realize there's too much and start to split it off. Okay, thanks everyone.
I think I've seen one more question up there in the chat. Is there a way to have a look at the courses or resources developed by your students as you mentioned?
Oh, sadly not anymore. So I think that's for those of you that are working, I guess if you're working for any education provider, but for all of the universities that I've worked at, and it's a pretty common thing that things that you are producing as part of teaching your university course, that IP belongs to the university rather than to you. So unfortunately, like a chunk of that stuff remained with the university. I don't really have rights to it anymore. Some of it is now a few years ago as well. So it would be probably digging into the computer before the current computer to dig it out. So it's not something that I have handy right here in front of me to share, unfortunately. But certainly as an educator, and I mean, those of you that have already done education in some format, when you see a learner produce something that is just so good and so far outside of your expectations, and every once in a while, like you might go, oh, even better than what I can do. It's a really satisfying feeling. And so, I mean, I think that's something where beyond whatever other rewards you're getting from building your online course, that sense of someone learning, taking what you know and just carrying on with it, is something that's really great.
Let me also jump in here to answer this question. Maybe it will be useful for our attendees to visit our upcoming webinar, where we'll be showcasing the courses that was created during our course creation contest, and maybe they will find some inspiration there, or they will decide to participate in our next year contest. I hope that maybe this will be useful.
Yeah, definitely check that. Yeah, I was going to add to that and say that something like that, so something like the iSpring has these course creation contests. Sometimes if you're a solo creator and you're like, I'd really like to make a course, but you don't really have a timeline. You don't have a boss that's telling you, and you don't have a kind of a semester that's kicking off in 3 weeks where everything absolutely has to be ready. You just, I'll do this sometime. Signing up for one of those contests or something along those lines gives you some forced deadlines. And so that can be a nice way to really just motivate yourself along to kind of build that first course.
Yeah, totally agree with you. All right, I think there are no more questions in the chat. And in this case, we can wrap up our webinar today. Thank you once again, Lyndon, for sharing all your expertise. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope you liked this webinar, and I also hope to see you at our future webinars and events. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye. Take care.